Hi everyone, welcome to Emersion's first ever Level Up session. This session is for existing Emersion customers and will focus on the Cumulus user interface and how to effectively navigate the interface. The session is hosted by Emersion's Head of Education and Training, Sharon Carpenter. I'll hand it over to you now, Sharon.
In today's session, we're going to really talk about the Cumulus user interface. So we have a number of names in Emersion for different parts of the system that you might hear, and they're generally used internally, but Cumulus is the big one that's available externally. Cumulus is the user interface that you use to access the Emersion platform. So we get a lot of feedback around the Cumulus UI, and so we thought we'd put one of the sessions that we do in Level Up is to give you guys a little bit of an idea about how we organise data, how we organise stuff. We'll go through a couple of the features around the Cumulus list and how to do a little bit more what I call power walking, which is getting to where you need to go a little bit maybe faster than what you're doing today. Got some tips from team members. So our support team has been kind enough to provide some input into this as well. And then we open it up for question and answer. So open forum. So hopefully you get something out of today's session. So the first part of it really is, how do I find things? Well, how we organise things, we're going to talk about, I guess, three areas. We're going to talk about the core modules and features first, how we organise the core modules and features. Okay, so with the core modules and the features, we organise that around a job role or a business unit. So when we, the core modules came out a long time ago. So they were always thought around, well, what kind of people and what kind of roles are working in our target market? And really, so for the finance team, for the people that are looking after accounts receivable, we have an area for you. Customers really was designed for the customer service teams and the people who are probably on the phones. For the provisioning team, so for the team who are processing activations, cancellations, plan changes, that sort of thing, you've got your own area too, which is under services manual provisioning. So that area is a area that's specifically designed for those guys. And of course, we have an example of the admin area, which of course is for those of you who are an Emersion admin. So if you think about a role or maybe where a function might fit, think about, what kind of people would actually need access to that, and you'll probably be able to at least have a bit of a think about where we might actually store that information. Okay. So optional modules and features are provided on their own menus or their own tabs wherever that is possible. Sometimes that's not possible, but for the most part they are. So Service Desk, for example, is available by the Service Desk menu. Late payment fees, you've got admin screens under the admin area. Same for things like cost centers. So all of these are optional modules and features. And usually there's an admin area and a user screen. They'll generally be in two separate locations. So the admins are for the admins and the users are for the everyday. So if we're looking at, if you're looking for something, it'll be on its own tab. And also the user screens may also be littered across in areas where they specifically apply. So how we organise data. So there's two things that we really use when we think about data, when we're deciding where does some data need to go. We in Emersion try to think about the natural hierarchical object, the relationship between the objects that we're talking about, and I'll give you an example of that. And then to actually display the information, we will use what we call the Cumulus list. Cumulus list has its own standard functionality. You've all been using Cumulus lists if you've been using Emersion at all. So you're probably familiar with that table with the column headers. That's what we're talking about with the Cumulus list. So when we display the data, will generally be in list format, unless it just doesn't make sense to do that. But where we place it, we try to think about where it naturally lives. I'll give you some really obvious examples of that. So the customer, you have an account. So an account is a particular object, represents a customer. Now, under that account, the customer can have one or many contacts. So, there'll be a primary contact, a billing contact. So an account can have one or many contacts. And that contact can have one or many addresses, phone, email, and other information that you collect. Of you that are working much with subscriptions is that we have natural relationships between our subscription objects. So pretty much every customer who signs up to a service with you has at least one package subscription with one service subscription in it. So if you're selling single services, that is the structure that you'll see. But if you're selling a bundle, a package subscription will have multiple services in it. And under each service, you could have a service features that you turn on and off, in which case you'll have service feature subscriptions to manage. But they live under the service because they're not, you can't have a service feature subscription without a subscription to the actual service itself. At the same level under services, you can have a bolt-on subscription. And if you're using bolt-ons, it's very possible that you might be using add-ons. And if you're using add-ons, you may or may not have an add-on subscription. So we nest those, that information where it sort of logically lives within the hierarchy, the natural hierarchy that exists there. And for those of you who are a little bit more familiar with Emersion, you'll know that this you can use these hierarchies to navigate because I've essentially put down there the navigation part. So if you log in and access a package subscription, you'll be able to access a service subscription, the service feature subscription, bolt-ons and bolt-on add-ons if you are using them. Not everybody is using them. So, and the same with the account. You go to the account to access the contacts. You go to the contact to access their address, phone, and email. So when we're thinking about, say, where do I find bolt-on add-on usage? So you'd go to the add-on subscription and there will be a view usage. Same with the service. So most people would be familiar with the service usage page. So you go to the service subscription to access the usage. With the bolt-on, you would go to the bolt-on subscription to view the bolt-on usage, and the same with the add-on. So if you think about, well, where you can't find something, and you're like, well, where might they store it? Have a think about of what the relationship between other information around it might be, and it might make it a bit easier for you to think, oh, it's probably there. And ultimately, if you can't find it, send us in a request. Okay. So at this point, I'm going to go over to my PC and log in to see a Cumulus list. So when we're talking about a Cumulus list, the first one that everybody should be familiar with is the customer list. Okay, so I'm logging in to a retail service provider account right now. And on screen, the first thing that happens when I log in is I'm given the customer list. That's very normal. So this table here that says, please enter the search criteria, it's actually a setting for the Cumulus list that we can turn, or the programmers really will just turn on and off. That specific setting says that I won't load the list, the entire list of customers when the page loads. I'm asking our customers and users to search. So to load the data, whenever you see this, of course, you need to perform a search. And that's done mainly for performance reasons. So there are customers out there with, thousands of customers. So if we tried to load this list every time, it would put a fair strain load on the system, and everyone else would notice. So when we do this, there's a number of things we do for performance reasons. As you will know, we only show a certain amount of records on the first page. So moving through this list, we have a very handy little feature that's on a lot of the lists, but it's not on all of them. Furthermore, you may need to have a look at your permissions as to whether you're allowed to download results as CSV. But it's a very handy way of exporting the data that you see on screen, and it will honour the search. So if you do a search and then export, it will only export the search, the data that's been filtered. So the Cumulus list comes with a number of pretty obvious features. So it has sorting, it has pagination as well. So where there's lots and lots of data, we will paginate this list. And over on the bottom right, you've got show me 50 records, show me 200, show me 1,000. The more records that you try to load at one time, obviously the longer it will take to return the data. So just be aware of that. That's normal. It's just going off and getting a lot of data. So the other thing that you can do is you can sort on these lists, and you can go off to the objects that you can click on. So these can be clicked on, and if I clicked on the account ID, or I'm going to right click and open a new account, that will take me to the customer record. If I click on the number of active services or active purchases, that's going to take me to those service subscriptions. And of course, all the Cumulus lists, not all of them have an action section, but most action sections are on the right and will come with either icons or hyperlinks to be able to tell you what you can do with that record. So you can see here that I clicked on active services. We can see here for this Emersion test account, there were 2 of them. And it's taking me straight to those service subscriptions. These are a good example of something that's a little bit more. So I've come into the service subscription, and again, I'm looking at a Cumulus list. This is how we present the data. And I've got a lot more show links here. So again, it depends on, but I don't have a export to CSV here. Now in this, I've turned on all of my permissions. So I know it's not a permissions thing, because I also have access to download the other one. If that means that the programmers have been directed not to allow people to export that data. And if you think about it, it's probably a good reason why we don't allow just anybody to download your customer's subscription data and walk off. So we strategically decide, with a bit of a thought process, what functions to turn on the Cumulus list and what functions we don't. Okay, so this next section is on power walking, and I guess what this means is how I can get to the information that I'm looking to find a little bit faster. So we're going to talk about a couple of tools that we have that we see are a little underutilized when we're actually looking at what people are doing in our system. So that's something we want to address. Let you guys know about it if you don't. So there is a quick search, and for those of you who have seen it, it's at the very, very top in the navigation bar. And so this is a very quick way of you being able to enter a piece of data, whether it's the invoice ID, whether it's the account name or ID, and depending on what you enter, it will open up either the account, the invoice, or the service subscription directly. So instead of going, okay, well, I need to go to Mr. Mickey Mouse and I need to find his SIP service, I could do that the long way, which would be go to the customer list, search for his name, click on it, go to his service subscriptions page. I'm down to 6 or 7 clicks by the time I do that. This is really designed around, I guess, our customer service teams who need to get there really, really quick and snappy. So if usually they'll have the customer on the phone, they could say, do you have the invoice ID, Mr. Customer? And yes, I've got the invoice ID, it's right here. Plug it in and it will open the invoice screen. It will take you to their invoice record very, very quickly. So that is one of the tools that you can use if you're not using already. Have a go. At the very least, if the customer, if all they have is their end user portal username, then you can use that to access the account. The other thing that we've got is the customer dashboard. So again, most people should have seen this. If not, it's the very first screen that you have open when you open a customer. The dashboard's really, really helpful because it aggregates and presents probably the most recent activity on the account and allows you to go diving into it to a bit more detail pretty quickly. So when we designed this, we actually designed it with in collaboration with a call center who was working for one of our customers. They said we need to reduce these times, and this was essentially the result. So you can click on any of these IDs on the customer dashboard. It will take you to that particular object, and it brings together at the very, very top of that whole section above, before those little cumulus lists, we'll call them, the baby cumulus lists, that brings forth the most recent alerts, the last, the payment method, and if it's either expired or if it's, disabled, the most recent billing information and the most recent alerts, because it could very well be that the reason that the customer is calling you is because of an alert that they received. So the last 2 or 3 records of each major area of interest that the customer is likely to be calling about. And the idea is that you should be able to get to those objects very, very quickly. And the idea is to resolve the customer's query on the first call if you can. So that's where the customer dashboard history came from. For those of you who are more familiar with the customer summary and the details screen, those existed prior to the dashboard. We leave them there. But the dashboard probably could essentially replace those screens, and it's a lot more cautious in the design. So using a combination of the quick search and or the dashboard, you're able to do all of these things on the screen here. You're able to do those get to those in no more than 3 clicks. So you can take a payment for a customer, set up portal access, add a secondary identifier. You could commit some migration, and you could add a note to a service ticket. Even some of the staff didn't believe me when I said that you could do that. And I said, yes, you can. So you can. It's just a bit of practice with those couple of tools, or knowing that they're there, but you should be able to use those 2 particular tools and move through the, and I guess Powerwalk is what the message we're trying to say, to be able to do what you need to do. Okay. So tips from the team members. Okay. So Jim from our service desk, some of you probably have spoken to Jim before. He says, use the pre-invoice report. It is your friend, and you can group charges like access fees on a certain package name. The idea is to use this to rectify any billing issues prior to invoices being generated, which is why it's called the pre-invoice report. They also suggest that you set it up to automatically deliver it to you, towards the end of the month, and you can go through it and say, oh, hang on, that actually doesn't look right. So you can use it to quickly identify charges. You can glance through all the accounts and all the card lines and just go, okay, I know that's not correct. I need to go rectify either the access fee on the plan or something like that before the period ends. So when the period ends, it generates the correct charges. So that's Jim's specific tip. You can find that report under reports, the billing tab. And so the other thing he suggests is if you do find a package subscription that's incorrect or something like that, or a bunch of fees where the fees are say all from the same plan or whatnot, there is a card line bulk import that you can update those charges in one action rather than individually on the person's account. So if you do have a situation where you have, say, 20 or more to update because, someone accidentally made a typo, come talk to us. If you don't, just be aware that import exists. It may or may not be turned on for you. If it's not, come talk to us about it. That's a pretty easy one to turn on. So Michael, who has been around in our, we found out 10 years, almost 10 years. He says, open in a new tab is your friend, and I'll certainly back him on that one. And the reason why is because Cumulus doesn't really come with breadcrumb navigation. And I think everyone here would probably be aware that we really do have 2 levels of menu navigation. So we have first level and second menu, and then it's essentially tab central. So we have tabs, and we have tabs inside of tabs, tabs inside of those tabs. Now, each one of those tabs is actually a new page that's being served. Back buttons don't like that. So browser back buttons tend to produce a lot of unexpected results and cause a lot of frustration. So that's one of the things that we do tell people, whether it gets in there or not. When you're looking to do breadcrumb navigation, open in a new tab. So I'm going to demo that. I'm going to start back on that customer list again. And what I'm going to do is I'll just use this particular account as an example. That's a good one to use. So I've logged into Cumulus. I've gone straight to the customer list. I have the account ID of the person I want to find. It will open the account. Now from here, I'll use breadcrumb navigation because I really want to go to the service subscription. I'm going to go find the service subscription, service name, the service plan that they're on. So I'm going to pick a service, any service. I've got the service plan name here, but I want to be able to go to that. So rather than copy that and then go up to packages and plans and go the long way, I'm going to go a slightly shorter way. So I'm going to open the service subscription. I'm going to open that in a new tab. So I haven't lost my list screen and I haven't lost my customer. Gone to the service subscription and now I can see the link to the service plan. I open that and I'm looking at the service plan. So if I want to step back at any point here, and now I'm looking at the service plan, I can see it's $15 a month. I can go, oh, okay, yeah, that's right. Or, oh, no, that's not. That's why it generated incorrectly. Oh, now I want to go back and compare the service subscription. Oh, but I took the long way. I don't have breadcrumb navigation, so going back is hard. Well, not if you use open in a new tab, because you can just go back and back and back. It does mean that you'll probably end up with a lot of tabs open, too many. And although I do challenge anyone here to beat our Jim Ritchie, who tends to have, he maxes out the browser in the number of tabs that he has open. And it's, I think, in excess of 200. I don't know how he manages that, but he does. Okay. So that's how we tend to recommend people achieve breadcrumb navigation in our particular system. And once they sort of get into the habit of doing that, that makes things a lot easier to do. And you can have as many screens and as many tabs open or many windows open as you need. There's no restriction there. So this one's not specifically a UI hack, so to speak, but it is to use a UI to solve the issue of invoice balances when they seem to be either lower or higher as they're expected. So there is an easy way to investigate that type of issue. So we suggest that you're using the journal, the ledger journal. For those of you who have not seen the journal before or don't know where it is, I'll log into a particular customer. I'll go to the customer screen and I will go to the transactions tab. Transactions tab is essentially the ledger journal. Of course, of those of you who are in finance and need to look over multiple accounts, you can access the journal from the finance menu under accounts receivable, and it's also the transactions menu, the sub-tab there under that here. So that will give you the journal records across all your accounts, with all transaction types. So when you're doing this, if you use that journal to be able to resolve those, because you can search on a specific payment or an invoice ID and it will just return all of the transactions, and you can step it through and then usually find the issue. We've got an example here that if you see a payment, that perhaps it was allocated to the wrong invoice. And you can then click on that payment, access the payment and just reverse it. So, and that applies to the simple and complex views that are on that screen. So the complex view replicates what's in the portal, the simple view replicates what's in the portal. So this, the end user portal will display the exact transaction types. So it's a simple view and a complex view. The complex view is only for Cumulus users. Because usually you guys need a little bit more detail than what the customer was interested in. So that really does help. And that's how we resolve it. Sometimes when support issues are sent to us and they're around invoice balance, questions around the invoice balance might be a little bit lower or higher than you expected. That's how we're stepping through. Okay, so this one's mine. And probably a little hint, there's something that was recently released that I'm not sure whether you guys have actually seen this or not. But if you're changing the permissions of a user and they're logged in, they won't see that permissions change until they log out and log back in again. A lot of systems work that way, right? We have a little shortcut to that. So at the very, very, very bottom of the screen in Cumulus, it's going to be a little bit hard to see, but if you look down the very, very bottom, you can see a little footer. And on the left of the footer, you can see the version number of Cumulus. And on the right of the footer, you'll see the account ID to the service provider account that you're logged into. This little session number down here, that's the session number that you're logged into. If you click on this, it will reset your session and it will apply any new permissions to the user. So you could change the permissions on the user and just say, just go to the bottom and click session, and then it will refresh and you'll be, new permissions will be applied. That just saves you logging out and logging in. So that's my tip. Okay, so Paul threw this one in, orders and provisioning. So this is around entering orders into the system. We have a recommendation, a long-standing recommendation, that enter the order into Emersion before you lodge the order with whoever the supplier is, whether it's a network or whether it's a vendor, depending on what subscriptions you're selling. So the reason we recommend that is, well, for automated service types, that's how it's done. You have to enter it into Cumulus because it's our system that will make a network request to the carrier to provision the services or to migrate the services or to cancel the services, whatever the case may be. So you always start inside Cumulus to do it that way. But we do see a lot of instances when there is no integration for provisioning, that we tend to see services being set up on the network, but the information is not making its way into Emersion for billing. If you enter the order into Emersion prior to entering into, you can use Emersion as a worksheet. So it gives you the work that's designed to be actioned. And that's what we're talking about, that manual provisioning page, where you can see all the orders that are in. You can see what needs to be ordered new. You can see what needs to be cancelled. And it just provides a work queue. And it makes it easier when billing. You don't have to backdate so much. You don't have to backdate billing. And if for those times that it has gone past the end of the month where the period closed, then you won't be, you'll be less likely to be stuck. So we do make a recommendation that you enter the order into Cumulus before you lodge the order with the network. Okay. So, time to open the floor. I'll get rid of this and open up the floor to questions and check the chat. Oh, that's okay. Cool. Okay. So, who would like to see something again, if anything? If anyone has any questions, now's the time to do it. Oh, the 3-click part. Absolutely. So no more than 3 clicks. So essentially, these are some of the things that, all of these things, so taking a payment, setting up portal access, viewing a customer service subscription, it is possible to access all of that or to do those things within 3 clicks of looking. All right. Okay, no more questions? Okay. So thank you so much for coming along. This is the first of our level up sessions, so I'm really, really pleased with the level of interest in these. Hopefully you found something useful out of it, and would love to hear any feedback that you have. You can send that direct to me or put it through the team. And have a great day. Stay safe if you're in Melbourne, like I am, and I'm going to go find out what happened in the other room. So thank you very, very much. And the recording will be available in the next few days for those of you who wish to download it. So bye for now.
Thanks, Sharon. Thank you.